Hello dear friends, I have been inspired by this picture that I saw in a magazine, just of these lovely snowed in beach huts, and this is actually from the Mersey Islands, but they're all in these lovely sort of soft colours. Reminds me of sort of almost perhaps a little bit whimsical, like some old-fashioned sweets. But this really just inspired me, and I thought, what happened to my glue books? Because when I was back in South Africa and I had my shop, I always had a book next to my computer and the phone where I was working. And then because I taught classes and I had craft lessons and things going on, I would be constantly looking for new ideas, and I used to scribble whatever came into my head in this book. So my intention is to maybe start a new glue book with this, because I think it'll be fun to have one with my life in the UK. And I'm going to just flip through and show you some of what my glue book looks like from South Africa. This is just one of many, but I've just chosen one for today. So this was just a simple A4 school book, one that had a black hard sort of cover, and I've found a nice magazine picture which I've put on the back, bit of pink tape here, but you can see it was a lovely spread of cosmos, and they've got a special place in my heart. I'm very funny. I love flowers, but I don't want them cut in my house. I don't mind if they're in a pot in my house, but cut flowers, I don't know. It's just not me. Anyway, so what I started to do was find that I had lots and lots of little things that I liked. There might have been just like a picture that I picked out of a magazine. There might have been like this little funky drawing here. And I had these things all lying around, so I decided to start to glue them down in a book. And then as I found things that inspired me or I wanted to remember, I would actually write them down. So my glue book is a combination of gluing things down and writing ideas. Here's an example of where I found a recipe to make your own mosaic tiles using a doormat, which actually did work out really well. Different kinds of things, homemade water purifier, which we needed when we had a drought, so we made use of those. But there were quite often times when people would give me a little card of encouragement or just looking for stuff for the shop. So this started out being more of a place to write down things, but it gradually became more of a glue book. So it is something that a beginner can easily do. There are no rules regarding this, and you can find all sorts of inspiration. This African beadwork is very particular to South Africa, and with the advent of AIDS in South Africa, a lot of the women that actually knew how to do this beadwork started to die, and it was awful, because I remember going to we have quite sort of big petrol stations on the side of the road if you're traveling long distances, and it's like a whole village, because there's shops, the equivalent of Marks and Spencer's there, we're known as Woolworths, or you might get a restaurant chain, perhaps like Wimpy or Nando's there, or you would get a coffee shop and you could buy food and sometimes curios and things. And these ladies often sat at those kind of venues where the tourists were going past doing this beadwork. And as they started to die from AIDS, it was awful, because you just saw less and less of it. And I found it particularly noticeable because I've always had a soft spot for that African beadwork. So here's just a few little things. This was a lady that made cards at one of our markets, just beautiful cards, and she made these papers which she then cut out and then just embellished with glue. Very, very, very just a simple idea, but rather nice. This was one of my suppliers where I got mosaic tiles from my shop, and they just had really lovely stuff going on. This candle factory was rather fascinating. It was situated in a place called Bredasdorp in South Africa, and they actually paint with wax on the candles. Let me just try and wiggle this around so you can see a bit better. So you can see some of the candles. Whoopsie, tea's going out the way. You can see some of the candles that have been painted, and they will normally take a theme. They might take animal prints, or in this one just blue and white, and actually paint with the wax on it. So they are very sought after by tourists when they come to South Africa, because they are so, so different. And it's not easy painting with wax on candles, because as you get the wax melted, and you wanting to start to paint, then everything starts to dry. This was a stamp of Mandela, who died on the 5th of December 2013. Some sort of funny little sketches that I sometimes just quickly drew for making up kits for my shop. This is a pamphlet from my friend Dot's quilting shop that she had with all her lovely quilts that she made. Gratitude, something I think that we all need to practice. I did go through a pretty tough time a few years ago, and I really can say that the Lord did honestly bring me through far better than I could ever have imagined, but at the time it didn't seem possible. There was my darling little cat, Tinky. I had her for 21 years, and she was just the most gentle, loving cat, not aggressive at all. And yeah, I had to sadly say goodbye to her just before I left the UK because she'd become sick. Okay, so these were quite a lot of things that I've found just to do stuff with. Making strawberry jam, very, very easy, just squishing them with your hands and then mixing some sugar in. Growing strawberries and ties, easy. Little things that you find maybe on Pinterest. How to do a crochet heart. You can make notes of those things that you love. So this book can be anything that you want to make it. It could be a kind of a journal book with a bit of collaging in, but most especially it's nothing that's actually too precious. And I don't know if you remember those old scrapbooks that we had as children. They had sort of a funny texture paper as the cover. They were usually A3, and then they had that blue scrapbook paper inside, and that was what we would use in those days. I love these. I love pansies. My gran used to say, look at all the little smiling faces, and we've always had pansies in our gardens. Just different ideas for planting, different things to do with stones. And you'll see that as I get towards the end of the book, it was nearing part of the time that I was going to leave South Africa, and I had a whole shelf full of lovely things in magazines, but I actually couldn't bring them with me because I didn't have space and I couldn't justify the cost. So I stuck a lot into a book just so that I've got the memory of it. We have a beach in South Africa which is actually a penguin colony, and when you go there, there's a little gift shop and you can pick up these little watercolor cards with the penguins doing all sorts of things. They might be holding hands, they might be having a picnic, they could be doing all sorts, but they really are delightful. Alright, all kinds of things. Making a message in a bottle. Yeah, one day I'm going to do that. A friend did that, and funny enough got a reply one day, so she nearly fell over she nearly fell over backwards because she wasn't expecting that. Alright, so you can see in the early days it was just writing down stuff for my shop, but I have a whole hoard of things here that are in one place rather than having a lot of little bits and pieces of paper. Game lodges like this are just beautiful. There was one that we went to called Sabi Sabi. Very expensive place, and the only way we went there was on our rewards. We called them Voyager miles that you got for traveling, because my husband was a pilot and we just couldn't use them at the time because we wanted to go to Australia, and there was an embargo on the flights because they were having the World Cup rugby there. So we eventually said to them, well, what can we do with them? And they said, oh, you can go to Sabi Sabi. So we arrived there, and you go into these bomas, which are big sort of like thatched areas that are surrounded by a fence because you're in the middle of a game park, and you go in there in the evenings to have your meal, and you're with all these other people, and they're saying they've been there for 2 weeks and 3 weeks. We're thinking, sure, we don't know how you afford it because it was so expensive. We were only there for a couple of nights, and eventually my husband said to them, well, how do you manage to be here? And they said, no, we're on our Voyager miles too. So obviously they had businesses that they were running from there. Love the game parks, I really do. These kind of shoes are what we call veldskoen. Veld being field, skoen being shoes, so field shoes. And they're made from leather, hand stitched, and they're just the most comfortable shoes ever. I have some of those that I brought across with me here. Cards from my friend, this is my friend Lynn, who just makes the most beautiful cards, and she's incredibly neat and does the most beautiful work. Growing fruit trees in containers. So as you can see, yeah, it can be anything you want. Wortelgat is a place that my hiking group of the church used to go to every year, and so we always kind of, had to pack things. And now this is just my checklist, which I put on a piece of card and covered with plastic, just so that I didn't have to think every year. Things for making sweets, lovely lavender fields, some of the, in the north of South Africa, some of the lovely cycling trails you can go on. This is a typical Cape Dutch farm, where they've got these low walls like this, and then this particular style of architecture. I worked in a lovely hotel in South Africa in Stellenbosch called Lanzerac Hotel, and I wouldn't be surprised if this picture was actually Lanzerac, because it looks similar, and my room was about over there when I stayed there. We lived on site because of the hours that we worked with them there. These lovely beaded things that the African people make, we could do them ourselves, they're not difficult. And here are some little beaded angels. So these are run as almost, yeah, an NGO, a non-governmental organization or a charity, to teach people skills so that they can earn money, because the beads are fairly inexpensive and the wire is inexpensive. So the most that you'll be looking at here is labor. This lady, Suzelle DIY, you can see on YouTube. She's just really funny. She really is funny. She dresses up as we call her a puppy, but I suppose you would call her an Essex girl here. And she's just a character. She does all sorts of DIY things, and she's actually really good. Lovely ideas for kids, for gardening, getting them interested in growing things. Frogs. I had the most funny thing. When we had our drought in South Africa, we weren't allowed to top up swimming pools and things for 4 years, and so your water levels just dropped, and it was a question of how do we keep it clean. So I did a bit of research, and I converted my swimming pool into a pond and put in some plants that would filter the water and a couple of fish. Well, we had quite a huge pool, and we put in 12 fish, and very soon we had 100 and so on. But we started to attract all the frogs, and they were just delightful. We had to build a little ramp for them to hop up when it was at the worst of the drought, because obviously the water level went down below about 3 or 4 steps. But they were happy hopping about, and we not only had clicking stream frogs, which make a very distinctive sound, but we had the endangered leopard-toed frogs, and I think there were about 8 that lived in my garden, and they used to make a sound that was like a very old snoring person lying on a park bench. And I used to lie in bed and laugh, because they used to be at their best when the rains were coming down heavily, but they were really loud, you couldn't sleep sometimes. Giraffes, those are just lovely animals. Lavender. Alright, so these are just things that resonate with my heart. So part of the journey of sticking the pictures down was that my marriage was a really tough one. My identity was somewhat flaky at the time that it ended, simply because I'd handed over so much and been cajoled into doing things other people's way. So my true self, what resonates with me, wasn't coming through. And when I was getting some counselling, the counsellor that I had said, well, what do you like? How would you decorate your home differently now? And I didn't know. So her suggestion was to go through magazines, take things out that actually really just make your heart jump for joy, and start just to build up a kind of a collage like I'm doing now with this, just so that you get an idea of where you're going. And I must say it was one of the most useful tools to help just to be able to connect with your inner self, the real you, because in any relationship we compromise, don't we? And in my relationship, I think I was the one that doing all the compromising on most occasions, not always, but most occasions. These are proteas. They're just gorgeous. They grow wild in the mountains in South Africa, but they are grown commercially and exported all over the world, and they are just the most beautiful flowers. This was Louis Giglio's Passion concert that we went to, and that was October 2012, and went with a whole group of friends. It was wonderful. I don't know how anybody that was standing outside the stadium could not be moved by what was actually happening inside the stadium. Right, now at this point in my diary here, or my journal, I actually started to feel more connected with myself, and sort of looked at this gate and I thought, this is just an entry into a new world, and although there are lots of bushes and things, there's little surprises around the corner. So yeah, we could actually start building a new sort of season in one's life. I love the beach. I love the oceans, and you can see here from some of the things that I've written down, like Sue Riders and harp and that I was starting to think about my move to come to the UK. This is a very typical kind of garden in South Africa, where we try and, let me just say it. If you are sensitive to the soil and how to use it best, especially in a climate where water can be difficult, you try and utilize all the space that you've got. And so here we would grow things like creeping thyme in between pavers, and little herbs and things along the borders. And you don't need a lot of space to be able to grow a lot of stuff. There's another sort of enlarged thing where each little block could be one particular crop. It's a bit like the square foot gardening model. Right, these are just lovely, lovely, calm spaces. So I wouldn't necessarily want a room like that, but it did just, when I look at this, bring me a sense of peace that, yes, I was going to be able to get there myself one day too. I wasn't lacking in peace, because I always trust the Lord, but just to do it. Just for today, from the Norenon meetings, I was in the family groups for many, many years, because there was addiction in my family and I was trying to heal myself from that. And yeah, fortunately my son didn't participate in that, but other members of my family did. So lovely gardens here. A hammock. I've always wanted a hammock and never had one, so I've got to get going with that. I must really make it a priority. And again, just flowers, lovely things that you can make. These are what we call wildebeest, or you might call them buffalo. They have a herd of about 350 to 400 of them in the Kruger National Park, which is a vast game reserve in South Africa. And on one occasion, we didn't just see them from afar, but they actually came and walked right round our cars. You know, they were putting their noses up against the window, and it was lovely to actually be able to see them that close. Just little gardening things. So these are some of the pages I haven't worked on yet, but what I have done with these pages was to put down some of the pictures that I tore out of those beautiful magazines that I had, and just make them pages ready to go. Just let go. Well, that was the thing that I had to tell myself over and over again. When you're giving away everything that you have you've had in your life, you know, all your furniture, your possessions and things, you're giving all that away to be able to move to another country. Just let go. And it was difficult to begin with. I must say, I really struggled, because there's always an emotional attachment to various things in your life. But the more I gave away, the more joy I found in my heart. And at the end of it, I was left in an empty house for 2 weeks because the transfer was delayed. And all I had was a mattress and a plastic chair, and obviously my clothes and the things I was bringing to the UK. And it was quite amazing to look at all of that stuff that I'd given away and thought, I don't really need it. So the balance of these pages are just things that I've found. Travel bug, you know, I saw that and I just thought, yeah, I'm going to a northern country where there'll be plenty of opportunities for travel. And then there's just some words from the songs. These were decoupage eggs that I did. Gosh, I've forgotten about those. So in my very, very early days of teaching crafts, I used to teach people to do decoupage. This was before I had my shop. So I'm probably talking about 1988, 89. And there was a shop that had opened in our waterfront that could sell anything that had paper on it. And I used to make these decoupage eggs and eventually the ostrich egg shells and sell them in her shop, until one of the other traders saw that they were going quite well. But I used to also send them up to Namibia, and the Germans there love eggs, and I used to sell hundreds of them. Bits and sketches that I do sometimes when I'm bored. Nice little box for putting all your things in. And so you can see that blank pages await new little bits. So I will, now that I've actually taken this out, I'm actually really glad. I'm going to start actually using some more. This is from my friend Kathy, does the most beautiful calligraphy. Another one of those cards. Some piers, the misty beach. My grandfather had a beach, well, yeah, he had a beach cottage, which now belongs to my sister, on the coast of South Africa, and the rocks were really jagged like that with these pools in between. But because they were so sharp, we had to swim with tackies on, or what you call sneakers or tennis shoes, so that we didn't cut our feet. This a friend of mine did. She just took a magazine page and a bit of Tipex or whiteout or paint marker and just did some dots. This little cottage is quite close to where my grandfather's cottage was, although his is right. His would have been along that path and down the other side to the sea. And yeah, very rustic sort of old Cape thatch cottages. More little penguins. So you can see with this kind of a glue book, it's really a book where you want to actually put what you are thinking about in your mind or things that you are enjoying. This was a little thing that I thought of while I was going through a difficult time, and it's something that has made me very aware of others. It says, don't deny me the pain I'm going through, because I had to go through that pain to come out on the other side and be strong. And some of these things that are taught in Narcotics Anonymous, Al-Anon, those kind of group meetings are just very valuable for everyday life. I wasn't an addict in any way, but I went to the family meetings, as I said, and they were very good. And this is just a map of South Africa, so that if I ever wanted to look up something or be able to show somewhere, I've got one page of a map and not a whole book. So thank you so much for joining me on my little flip through of my glue book. I hope that, oh, you're getting a lot of reflection now, aren't you? Let's rather do that. I hope that it's made some of you a little bit more confident to just start a book just by sticking pictures down. You can see there's nothing fancy here. I haven't done a lot of painting and stuff, but just start gluing things together. Your confidence will grow, and it is for you, this kind of book. It's not for sale, so enjoy the journey. It's about having fun as you go and releasing your creativity and growing. And if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Bye for now.